Hey everybody, this is MarketXero. Today I'm going to walk through an update for the installation and then a detailed walkthrough of all the settings for my Footprint Pro indicator. I'm going to be going through the outline I have on my webpage. You can find the link in the description below. Let's jump into it. So the installation, before you install, you want to ensure that you have the correct add-ons. First, check Help, About. Make sure you have Order Flow Plus. If you do not have that entitlement, you can go to your Tools client dashboard, and right now they're under maintenance, so I can't log in from this location, but typically if they're not under a maintenance, then you can log in from that point and go into your profile and add that add-on from NinjaTrader. You may have that already if you are using my free indicator on TradeOvit. The add-ons, data subscriptions, all that good stuff is ported over to NinjaTrader from TradeOvit. The next thing you want to do is make sure your tick replay is false. So go to Tools, Settings, Market Data, go to Historical, and check to make sure that Show Tick Replay is false. It is unchecked. If you don't do that, you're going to have some serious rendering problems with the indicator, and it will likely not perform the way that you desire. So you have to have that unchecked. If you do have that checked, a warning will come up on your screen warning you to resolve that with clear steps to address that. Next thing is you want to import the add-on. Go to Tools, Import, and NinjaScript add-on. From here, you will want to look at your drive, wherever you downloaded the zip file, select that add-on. Make sure you just grab the zip file. Don't extract the zip file and try to download or add on the files in their extracted state. You want to have it in that zip file format. Okay, once you do that, you can set up your chart. You see I have a chart up here right now, but if you don't have it set up, you can go to New, Chart, select your instruments. Today we'll do ES, double click that. You must ensure that the data series type is volumetric. I set mine up on a base period type of range, not minutes, and then it'll be 20 ticks. And then ticks per level, I have it 1 for ES. If you're on a thinner book instrument such as NQ, you may want to ramp this up to 4 or 5, and my indicator can accommodate that. Once you've gone through that process of setting up your chart the way you want, there may be other things you want to do here as well, like maybe go to properties. You can do all your different colors, crosshairs, all the good stuff. You can handle like global crosshairs and things of that nature up in the top toolbar. Once you get that set up the way you want, you can add the indicator that you downloaded from me by right-clicking, go to Indicators. And in here, you'll find a list of all the indicators that you've either added on or that are included with NinjaTrader. All these are by default with NinjaTrader, except for MarketXero Footprint Pro. So see, I've already added this on, but if you didn't add this on, you can come here and double click. It'll be added on to your chart. You'd have to apply to do that. I'll remove that since I have that already. The next step will be to ensure that you have the machine ID entered in here. To do this, go to Help, About, find your machine ID here. You can double click, then copy, and then go back to your chart, open up the indicator. You can either right click, you can hit indicator icon up top. You can also do Control I, which I've kind of got used to doing these keyboard shortcuts. And then you'll paste your machine ID here, apply that. You will have to ensure the license is active. So to do that, you can go to the link that you found in the onboarding email from me. And on that email, you will find a link that goes to the webpage where you submit your machine ID to me. I have to manually register that with NinjaTrader, but I will typically do that within 30 minutes during regular trading hours, Monday through Friday. If it's outside that time, it will take a bit longer depending on what is going on, but I will do my best to get back to you as soon as possible by registering that and then messaging you with an email letting you know that it is now registered. And the last thing I would say before jumping into this is that if you're new to footprints or order flow in general, you're probably going to want to not turn on everything. This could be pretty intimidating. And actually, I've added some additional things on here, which I'm not even sure I'll keep on here or not. But you might want to just keep a couple things on, such as maybe the absorption numbers here, maybe the volume imbalances, and kind of go from there by adding things on and tweaking it. But try to keep things simple and not be overwhelmed, because if you look at the settings here, there is a lot going on here. Okay, so the first thing in the section, once you go to the help, go into the colors. You have positive, negative candle colors, total volume color, ask, buyer color, seller color, dynamic opacity, and the min volume opacity. You'll notice as you come in here that there is help tooltips on each one of these items. So if you hover over any one of these items, it will give a greater amount of detail around what this does and some potential recommendations and things of that nature. I spent a lot of time on getting all of this set up so it's kind of clear for those who may not be familiar with these items. First item, positive candle color. Obviously, if it opens at one price and then closes higher, this will be a positive. Any candle that opens lower and then closes higher than its opening will have this color. And inversely, any candle that opens at end value and then closes lower than that value will have the negative candle color. You can set these any you want. I have these set up by default, typically by blue or orange. Changes to whatever you want. Total volume color, I try to keep this neutral because this is a combination of buyers and sellers. Ask buyer color. So this is going to be aggressive buys on the ask. So the next section, ask buyer color and the bid seller color. In the circles I trade, typically we've been keeping these blue and red. You can change these however you'd like. The next item, use dynamic opacity. So this will affect the opacity or the color for the bid and the ask and the total delta values as well. The color of this based on the volume. So the highest volume is always going to be the most opaque. We see here 327 on this delta. It is the highest level of blue, this Dodger blue. And then on the right-hand side, which is the total volume, 11,193. This is going to also be the highest opacity because it's the highest volume. And the lowest volume, which might be, looks like 85, has the lowest opacity. This opacity here is what the lowest is. I could set this to 90 and there will be minimal difference. You see how the colors now pop off the screen? This way, it kind of makes it more apparent where the higher volume is, whether you're in the total, delta total view or the bid-ask view. Next item, display. We have font size, font color, display mode, compact mode, hide left and right text, set auto hide text threshold. Some of these are pretty straightforward. Font size is going to control the font size whether you're in bid ask or delta total. Font color, same as for the font color for the volume text on all of these, whether it's bid ask, delta total. Display mode will display bid ask or delta total. Quick overview of how that works. If I maybe zoom in here and bring the indicator settings back up. We'll start here at the delta total. So looking at this area here, on the left-hand side, we see a 36, and then the other side is 36. This means that there were 36 contracts purchased at market on the ask and 0 on the bid. Left side is delta, right side is total. If you go to bid-ask view, this becomes apparent. We see 0 on the bid and 36 on the ask. How this works is the volume you see in bid ask represents the aggressive purchases for bid and for ask. Going to the delta total, it'll be the ask volume minus the bid volume. So in this case, you'll see 1757 total volume. This means that we've had 277 greater amount of ask offers than we did for those bids that were aggressively purchased on the left-hand side. Next item, compact mode. By default, this is on. If you want to deselect this, you'll see that there's a great amount of detail that's shown regarding the text. It's unobscured with the volume bars. So everything has its own column. Some might prefer that, find it easier to read because they want to look at the numbers. I find I tend to use the compact mode more often. Hide left and right text, pretty self-explanatory. You can just hide one side column or the other if you like, or both. And the last item for this section, it's going to be the auto hide text threshold. This controls the zoom level where the text will start to hide. So I have it set at 40 right now for myself. As I zoom further out, you'll see that the text becomes obscured, it hides, and then when I zoom back in, the text on that volume reappears. If you want to change these values, I believe higher. What is higher? Let me check I need to check my own tooltip here. Okay, so 100 shows only very wide bars, and I guess 0 never hides. There you go. I'll put this to 10, and just see, yeah, the text never really hides. I can zoom pretty far out, and it doesn't hide. Highly recommend check the tooltips. Even help somebody who developed it. By the way, you can control your width of these footprint bars by holding the Alt key and pressing the up or down arrow. As you do this, it can make them wider or more compressed. I tend to do this until they're almost touching and then leave them at that. Divergence. Turn this on. Divergence will be when we have a decoupling of the delta volume from the candle close. I've turned this on, show divergence text. In these areas, you have settings for divergence text to be shown, and then the color for the absorbed buyers and sellers, the font size of that divergence text, the distance, and then the min divergence value. I'm going to turn on the grid. Let me turn on the grid to show a little more detail what this looks like. I can turn on the grid by going Control F or right click in the chart and go to data series and show bar statistics. I'll turn off a lot of these other items here, but make sure we have delta, not delta change. We want the delta bar. Maybe show the percentage just out of curiosity, and the rest of these volume items as well. So you have two bars, 707 and 722. It's a negative value, which means that the sellers were absorbed by passive buyers. If you go down to the grid below, you see that the delta bar shows 707 and 722. So what happened here was, if you look at the buy volume and sell volume, there's 4485 and 5192. 5192, a greater amount of aggressive buys on the bid side. And despite this, it closed bullish. It opened 95.50 and it closed at 97.75. So what happened? Well, there's passive buyers who were absorbing all of that volume that was occurring on the bid side aggressively. And that can often be an indicator that there's either momentum in a direction or a potential reversal. I use it a lot for spotting reversals at key levels. Anytime there's a seller absorption, you'll be underneath the bar. And if it's a buyer absorption, where buyers were absorbed by sellers, that will show a value above the footprint bar. It's interesting here, we see that sellers absorbed buyers, pushed it down to this area here at 61.83, 84. And then buyers were able to step in and start push price up, and we're absorbing sellers on the way up. She formed a nice B footprint right here. Opening the settings back up. Let's go to divergence. On the other ones, the font size, it's pretty self-explanatory. The distance size to the footprint bar. This actually does affect not only this value here, but also the footprint volume below. So if you set this, just set a higher level 8, you'll see it gets pushed out further. By default, I had set the 3. I'll go into later how the footprint volume items are affected by this. And then we also have the min divergence value. If I wanted to only see items of value I thought were important to me, maybe you'll say 500. This is absolute value. So if I put 500 here, you'll see only these two should remain once I hit reply. Yeah, and those two disappear and these two remain. Next up, footprint volume. Something I've added on recently. I'm probably going to continue evolving this as I move forward. What it does is we have 3 different areas we can show, and I'll go into more detail. But first off, we have font size for all 3 of these values. We have then show trade percentage, show delta percentage, and show delta. Show trade percentage. Hit apply on this. It will show a gray dot above those areas where the trade percentage settings were triggered. In this case, I have it set to 75. So what is the trade percentage? That would be, if you go back down to the volume grid, the number of trades divided by the volume. The number of trades is the number of orders submitted, whereas the volume is the number of contracts executed. So what does this mean? Well, think about going to a restaurant. Let's say you're going to McDonald's. Every person that shows up to the counter is putting in an order. It's a high retail environment. There's no big spenders at McDonald's. It's a close to 1-to-1 ratio. Now, think about going to a higher end restaurant. What's happening there? Well, in this case, you have one check for a table. Maybe there's somebody who's reserving an entire room and has one check. The person who has reserved the room probably has the bigger bill and spending the most amount of money. Maybe they reserved an entire room, a private room. There's a party of like 20 people. They're dropping $1,000+ plus. They're the big spender. Everybody else in the restaurant is spending a decent amount of money, more than McDonald's, but they're maybe considered the retail in this case. What you really want to watch is that big spender, the person who's spending a lot of money on one order. And so in this case, number of trades, the lower this is, will show a lower percentage and therefore may be an indicator that institutional traders are stepping in. And so you look at the chart here, when we see it reversed here and rallied up, and was kind of into the close actually, that institutional traders were starting to step in and close out their trades. Look at that. I mean, probably squeeze people up into the close. This is a Friday close. We had a pretty big drop because Trump said something about Canada. It dropped. And then you see the drop, probably institutional traders, and then into the close, they stepped in again. So that's how that's used. Other items here underneath the footprint volume will be delta percentage and the delta change. Delta percentage, let me turn that on, apply. This will be when the delta will have a certain percentage of the total volume. So here, maybe I look at this one here, 12.8. You see down here, the delta percentage in this bottom row, 12.8, and the delta on this was 707. The total volume was 5,500 about. So this was 707 divided by 5,500 gets you around that 12%. These values will always be absolutes. We see in this case, we have a negative 707, which was the sellers aggressive on the left-hand side here, creating that stronger delta, which was the ask minus the bid, and therefore caused this double-digit percentage. Oftentimes, this can indicate a reversal or an exhaustion because one party is stepping in and is giving it its all to push price a certain direction. Things get reversed because of exhaustion after a delta double-digit print. Could be, in this case, 10%, 12%, more than that. This isn't to close, probably not the best example. I mean, we were going earlier here. I'm in mountain time, so this down here is like 1240. We see, there was sellers stepped in again, and then we had a double-digit percentage on the delta print. And then with sellers step in here, price moved down. See buyers try to step in here, and they got stuffed, 12%, and sellers continued to push price down. On this delta, there's a stranded buyers trying to push this higher by aggressive buying the ask and got stranded and kept them moving down. So that's how that's used. I may make an option in the future to make this an icon at a certain level. And the next and last item within footprint volume is the delta change. Delta change is the delta of the last bar subtracted by the current bar. So we go to apply examples here. Here we go, the reversal. How do you arrive at 1609? Well, we look here at the delta bar. The previous was 1103. Current one is minus 506. The delta between those two is 1600. So it's the delta of the delta. So that's what delta change is. And I'll go to the next item, high volume bars. So these you can set independently for the bid, the ask, the delta, and the total. And what is going on here is that you can have an icon appear. See this white triangle here. So I have this set up currently in my user settings to be based on a percentage of the entire volume of this footprint bar. And so if it hits a certain percentage, a icon will show here that there's indication that not only was the point of control for this bar, but it also exceeded a certain percentage of the total volume of the entire footprint. We see one here on the total, one here, and one here. You can see these also in the bid-ask view. So these appear even if the text is hidden, which is kind of nice to have a symbol here to show that sellers were really aggressive here. You see this strong percentage at 28, again here at 25 and 25.0. So it can be used to see when there is a participant with strong intention and stepping in with significant volume for that footprint bar. You can set these up in two ways. Either you can set by percentage or by raw contract value. So each one of these, you notice there's settings for either side of this. You can either do contract threshold or percentage threshold. You can tweak these any way you want. I use a percentage, but if I wanted to only have a icon show if there was a threshold met for the raw number of contracts, I could do that as well and have like 100 here, hit apply. We see that for the bid, yeah, these are still appearing here. So what level? Let's see, 500, a filter. Yeah, so let's filter it out now to the right-hand side. So you can do a hybrid of this where it's going to be a combination of contract and the percentage, just a contract or just percentage. And the logic will look at both of that and consider it an and. It's a Boolean functionality. The rest of these should be pretty straightforward. They're the same for all four. Bid ask, delta total. You want to set the total values a little bit higher because it is total volume. And then we have functions here to set the colors and the icon size. Next up, point of control and the value area high and low. POC. So the POC, point of control, is same concept. You look at a volume profile. Point of control is going to be where the most volume was traded on that footprint bar, or a volume profile at a certain price level for the entire session. Here you can show the point of control for all four volume types, bid ask, delta total. You'll see now there's some yellow lines appearing. This is the point of control, the highest volume on that respective footprint bar. This will work as well for the delta total. So if that's a view you prefer, which I tend to use more often, you can see that as well. Other settings, you can control the opacity, the width, and then you can also have the value area high and low and set the respective settings around opacity, width, and then the value percentage. Typically the value area high and low is considered the one standard deviation, or 34% from the point of control. You may want to use these to find where volume is concentrated. Next up is volume imbalance. Turn these on, show volume imbalance. What is volume imbalance? This will show when there is a ratio that you set as a user of buyers versus sellers, bid versus ask. And when that ratio exceeds the level you set, it will draw a border around the respective volume bar. So here I set the 3 imbalance ratio. And I'll come back to these settings a little bit later. But on the chart here, you'll notice that we have now some borders drawn. You see some blue borders, some magenta borders, and we even have some zones extending from one of these volume imbalance zones. What's happening here is that we have 3 adjacent volume imbalances that are next to each other, and therefore it creates a zone which can be thought of as a demand zone. If price came back down here, it may test and continue to the upside. So how to use volume imbalance. Maybe here's one example from the 24th of June. We see this strong seller imbalance that pushed down through here. We call it a key level. I think it was pre-market high or something of that nature. So sellers were very intense, and this became a stop hunt where it pushed through quickly. And then we see a seller imbalance stranded here. Price ran up, the candle closed bullish, and we see a buyer imbalance here. We also see a delta absorption number shown here of sellers being absorbed here as well. And we also see more buyers stepping in here, creating an imbalance. And once they cleared this seller imbalance and we created more buying imbalance, this area here around 61.17 would be a good place to grab an entry. We had a flush with sellers hitting the stops, triggering some absorption, buyers stepping in and creating a volume imbalance, additional absorption here, and buyers clearing this volume imbalance, which could have been resistance, continue creating volume imbalances, a pullback a little bit into that footprint, testing that previous area of seller imbalance, and then rising up and continue rising throughout the day. Going back into the settings for the volume imbalance, we can set the imbalance ratio. So I have set the 3-to-1. So if there's 100 on the bid, 300 on the ask, then we'll see a offer imbalance shown with stronger buyers that are hitting the ask aggressively. You can have a minimum imbalance delta. I have that 0 right now, but you can set that so it's filtering out any lower volume numbers. Regulate the colors here, magenta and cyan. And then the border width. This border width is drawn from the exterior of the volume bar and extends outward, not inward. The zero prints actually do the inverse, so they don't conflict with each other. And then you can control if you show the zones. So before, when I showed that zone, let's go to that really quick. For zones, I can have those shown or not. If I want to turn them off, I can uncheck that, hit apply. And similar for persist imbalance highlights. If I want to show those that were filled, I can keep that checked. If I want those to be removed, you can see now only the volume imbalances where price is not interacted with will be retained and everything else is removed. And I kind of skipped over this. The minimum adjacent level, again, this is the number of levels you need present to have the zone. If you made this 5, this one to the right would disappear. Let's put it back to 3. You'll see that'll reappear. There's that zone back. And then the opacity of this, I have it set to 20. If you make it 100, it's going to be that bright cyan. One item note about the footprint volume items here. You notice these are all stacked. So here we have a gray dot and then the delta percentage. As one is removed, another will take its place. So if I remove the percentage here, hit apply, they will move down. The distance these are set at are determined by the value above, which is the text distance to footprint bar. This is set to 3. If I put this to, let's say 7, you'll see they'll get pushed out. Text divergence, where the absorption value will always take precedence and be the closest to the bar. So here at the close, we had 23.45 sellers absorbed as we closed bullish into the end of the session. Last item, zero prints. What are zero prints? That is when there is a value greater than 0 on one side of the auction and then a value that is 0 on the other side of the auction. When the footprint closes, that zero print is locked in if it retains a 0 value on either side of the auction. I have this set to yellow. You see a few here. Let's zoom in and see what's going on here. So reminder, we're in the delta total view here, and you see these numbers here. We have 34, minus 54, minus 41, minus 54, minus 47. These were all zero prints. There were nobody that was hitting the ask at market at these values, including this value. So why is this last value not highlighted yellow? Because I have ignore high-low zero prints. If I turn this back on, you'll see this is shown here. I typically have that on. This was a new session low, and therefore it will be ignored. It typically will not be ignored for each bar, but if it's a new session high or low, it will be ignored. So you zoom here, we see minus 54, minus 41, minus 54. These are all zero prints because there were participants on the bid and 0 participants on the ask. And therefore, it's a zero print. It created a vacuum. And it did this all the way down. We go to the low. Once it reversed, it cleared out those zero prints. Typically it would be zones extended, but as price goes back up, it will take out those zero print zones and retain the borders for those previous zero prints. The settings for this, we can control the color, the width of the border. Again, the border goes towards the inside, unlike the volume imbalances. So if I do a big number here like 8, you'll see it kind of points towards that interior of the volume. Therefore, the borders for these two items, zero print and volume imbalance, should not conflict. You can set the opacity for the zones that extend once we have a zone created. Again, they're not shown here. If I put this on a replay, so you can only see this bar and not the following bar at 1244, you'd see the zones extending, much like the volume imbalances. We have ignore high, low, zero prints. These will ignore at the highest, lowest of each point of that session. I'll go more into the session down below. There's a minimum value for zero prints. You can extend the zones, and then you can have these set up so that is a volume fill or price touch. So how are the zones removed? That's what this is talking about. And technically, if there were 191 on the bid, 0 on the ask, if at the same price level, instead of having a delta showing the ask was hit, let me go back to here. If I go back to bid ask view, you can see the zero prints maybe a little more clearly. Again, we see these 4 here, all on the bid. If this next bar came up here and at this price level where the 191, let's say it was, if there was not this 595 and instead this was 0, this zero print would continue extending through because this would still qualify as a zero print. Despite price moving through and moving back up, if there was nobody participating on the ask side, this technically would still be a zero print. I typically keep this at volume fill. It's pretty rare to have price move through a zero print without both sides of the auction being filled, but it did happen this week. It lasted for a few bars before it was eventually filled, so it does happen in rare cases. The next item is the scope. So you can have these set so that they appear only during the regular trading hours session, the cast session. Again, I'm on Mountain Time, so see 7:30 to 1400. If you're Eastern Standard Time during the regular trading time zone, you're looking at 9:30 to 1600. You can make these into the full session. So if it's a full trading day, in this case, these are still valid because we never had price come down to these lower levels. But if price traded down here earlier, you're not going to have a zero print show up. So this is one key element of a zero print, is that it's only valid if price has not traded there during the session, or in this case, it has not traded during the entire full session, which is the extended hours and the regular trading hours. If price does trade a certain area during regular trading hours, and then we have price trade again and have a situation where there is zero on one side or the other of the auction at a given price level, that will not count as a zero print because price has traded in that previous level and there were participants on both sides of the auction. Okay, so that's everything. Zero prints. I have some strategies noted here as well that I like to use. I won't go too much detail here. I find that everybody has their own trading style and use things differently. I do like the idea of triple confirmation where you have divergence, you have an imbalance zone, and then you have a key level. That confluence of signals typically will have a higher probability for a setup being a higher probability to turn out in your favor. I go into some other just other things about the futures benefits and some mistakes to avoid. So if you have any questions, let me know. I'm going to continue upgrading this. We are currently in our pilot group still. They've given a lot of great feedback. There's other just minor things that have already been improved on the indicator with their feedback. So I'm really grateful for everything they've been giving me so far. And I do plan on opening this up in sometime in July to a group of co-pilots, so they can come in here as well and take advantage of this and give the last bit of refinement before we do a full release. If you have any questions, feel free to leave comments here, or you can drop me a DM on Discord at MarketXero. That's MarketXero. Thank you very much for watching the video and happy trading. Have a great day.